All right, guys, I'm going to show you my method of basically getting the measurements and then how I'm sizing my brass. Let me show you what rifle we're working with. Nothing special, just the Ruger RPR and 338. So the first step of this is going to be, you're going to need some equipment. Now, if you're reloading, obviously that's why you're watching this video. We're going to need to do a couple things, get a little bit of equipment. First, you're going to want to grab a couple of pieces. Now, this is already fired. It's not clean, absolutely nothing. It's just fired. That's that. We need to grab a notebook. So grab a notebook, a pen, and then you may need special tools. We're going to take our bolt completely apart. And then let's start with that process. So I've already taken the bolt apart on this. And so to avoid having to do this over and over, you're going to need to write down these specifications. But if you don't know how to take your bolt apart, if you have some type of Remington type platform, that's going to be like your Bagaras, stuff like that, you can take your entire bolt apart with a shoestring. Basically put your shoestring on the back, pull that piece apart, just keep turning it, your firing pin and all that stuff comes out. You're just going to need a small punch, and then we're going to punch our plunger out from the bolt head, and then this will be empty. What this allows us to do is basically take all the tension off of our bullet, and we'll get no resistance. So let me show you what that looks like. So once we have our bolt in here, and this isn't clean, but it should basically just fall straight down. So this being a dirty chamber, but you can see it does fall straight down. So that's what we want. So I'm using Hornady dies. Now I have a bunch of other dies, and I actually like the Hornady rings the best. So all of my dies are going to have these Hornady rings. So what we're going to do is back that off, and then basically you're going to follow the instructions. We're going to screw this all the way down to the shell holder. I'm going to run this ring down just a little bit, and I'm only using the ring as a way, as basically like a gauge. And then I want to back that off. And I actually kind of want to back it off, quite a bit. And like a good half, maybe even, let's say a full turn. And then we're not going to lock the ring down, but we are going to tighten it. So we've got a pretty decent gap under here. So there's our gap. Now I'm going to close that gap in just a little bit. That's way too much, but that's kind of just a starting point. Okay, so we're going to lube our case. We're going to run it all the way up. Now we can see that we obviously, now I'm going to start way back to just give this demonstration. So every time that we size this case, what that is going to do is make this just a little bit longer and a little bit longer. So as we're going down, it's going to kind of stretch this case, and that's basically what we're wanting, but it's pushing the shoulder back. So what we're looking to do is to bump our shoulder back somewhere between 1 and 3/1000ths. Now, the reason I say 1 and 3/1000ths is because 2/1000ths is what you want. But you're going to get a little bit of play. Like when you start doing this and you measure them, you'll see one may have bumped it 1.5 thousandths, one may be 2, one may be like 2 1/4. So I typically go between 1 and 3. Anywhere in there is going to be as good enough as I can get with my equipment. My goal is for shooting for 2, and then I'm going to show you how to check it once we're done. So we're going to check this on our gun real quick. Get that out of the way. So I'm not wanting to have pressure to push forward and then push this down. So we can see I still have that pressure. Now what happened is I feel like I've got more pressure on here because in this sizing process, I have actually lengthened that case a little bit. And what happened was it is now going to have a tighter tolerance in my chamber. So I'm going to scoot this in. Now I know I've got that big gap. And so I know this is going to take me quite a while. So this is our process. So once I start getting closer to the bottom, which at the moment, I'm basically going 1/4 of a turn. And don't forget to use plenty of lube. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this until I get really, really close. Okay, so I've done this about 3 more times. And basically what I'm doing is I'm using the very top nut of this. And I'm going from the corner to the flat spot to the corner to the flat spot. And I'm turning it and I'm doing it every time. So now I've got, I still have resistance, but I'm much, much closer. There's a lot less resistance. So now what I'm doing is I'm actually getting into the area where I'm sizing that, that shoulder down. So we're gonna do a little bit more lube. Don't forget, we wanna get the inside of the case too. And then I'm just gonna loosen this up. And then I'm gonna turn it, I'm on the edge, so I'm gonna go to the flat spot now. And then I'm just gonna continue this process. Okay, there we are. So now we can see there is no play in there. So it might actually be perfect. If I'm lucky, that's gonna be perfect. So here's what I'm gonna do. Let me grab something and I'm gonna show you a trick. Okay, just so I can get a good grip on this piece of brass, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe all the lube off. But if you get some Scotch tape is exactly 2/1000ths. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our Scotch tape. We're gonna run kind of a long piece. You don't need this long of a piece, that's actually way too long. And then what I like to do is go flat on the table and just push pressure and turn it. We wanna make sure that that tape really sticks on there. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna just push this on the side of the table at an angle and rotate it. And that's gonna cut the tape for us really, really good. And then that's gonna make it exactly where we need it to be. So this, if I did it correctly, this should basically peel right off. Now, the reason I like to grab a little bit bigger piece is I like to hang that on the corner so we can reuse it. So now we have just added, we want to bump our shoulder back 2/1000ths. So if it's perfect, now that we've added that tape on there, that's exactly 2/1000ths. When we put this back in here, we should have just the smallest amount of resistance. So if we don't have any resistance, that means that we bumped it back more than 2/1000ths, which might be okay because if we're at 3/1000ths, I consider that okay. But see, now I've got this pushed in here, and so I'm just a hair over that 2/1000ths. So at this point, if you want to call that good, we can call that good. But I really do want as exact as I can. So we can see, oh, you guys can't see that. So my bolt is still falling. There's just as much resistance as there was before. That's probably because it's a little dirty. So we can see that that falls. So this is probably good, but I'm gonna actually go ahead and back this up. We're gonna need a new piece of brass. So again, I'm gonna check this in my chamber just to make sure. These are all from my same lot of reloads. I just want to make sure that I should have quite a bit of resistance on this one. And I've definitely, that one didn't have quite as much. Yeah, there we go. There's some decent resistance. And then I'm going to try this again. Okay, so I have just the ever slightest resistance on it. So I would say that's probably, it needs to go down about 1/1000th. So I know from the last round that I sized, which is just a little bit over, and this round, we're almost there. Okay, so that piece is sized. Let's go ahead and measure it in our chamber. And I'm gonna say that that should be good. So again, we're gonna do our tape test. Tape on there. Now we can see, once I put this in there, I've got that resistance back. So I've got that resistance. So now when we take this piece out, we're gonna peel off that tape. And then once we have that tape off, we're just gonna double check it. And then there we go. So it falls on its own. So that's exactly where we want to be. Now the next very important thing is we need to lock this ring down. So once you take the die out, because it has that lock ring on, and you throw it back on there, we should be basically dead on in that same spot. So we'll test it. I'll go ahead and lock this down. I'll take it off. I'll put it back on there. I'll size another piece of brass, and we'll see where it's at. And again, this is where I say that 1 to 3 thousandths, because if we take this off, just to avoid doing all this over and over, once we lock this down, it should be good to go. So let me lock this down, and then we'll test it out. Okay, so I've got it locked down. I went ahead and took it out. So let's run this back in here, and we'll check it again. And again, so for this, we're going to get a new piece of brass. All right, now let's test it in the gun. And we are good there. So the next thing is we're going to go and do our tape test one more time. So let's wipe the lube off of here. So I've got the tape on there, if you can see that. And then we're gonna just test this on here. Now I should have that resistance back on there. And I do. So that should be perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and take the tape back off, test it one more time. Now nothing should change, but oh yeah, perfect. The thing we need to do is start writing some notes. This is the Hornady, I think it's called the body comparator. So this is actually what's going to take the measurements. So really simple to use. We basically just close it down on here. It's got a little locking ring on here. We just lock that in, and then we're going to get a measurement. Now that I have this in here, we are at 2.326. So now the next time we need to load, what we can do is we know exactly what we need to load to, and that'll give us our 2,000 spot. Now let me grab another. So we're right around there. So it looks like we're only having to bump these down. So we're actually bumping it back almost exactly 2,000. All right, so we're exactly where we want to be. I'm gonna double check that, because once you go to tighten your lock ring down, just a little bit before you tighten that ring down, but you want to hold them both at the same time. It may actually go in, 1,000. It's probably ideal, which I didn't do. It's probably ideal. So last but not least, we write that information down. So this is basically my data book. Any kind of reloading I do, everything I do goes into this book. So I have all of my history on everything, but I get a second book, and once I have my exact load and I've tested this load, not just like, okay, this is a good load, go out to the range, test it and call it, yeah, it's good. I mean, putting some time in that load, running it out to 1,000 yards, or doing what its intended purpose is. I take all of the information for that exact load, so the case head, space, everything, and I've got a separate book that I write that stuff in. That way I can go to that specific book to build that specific load, and I don't have to rummage through everything in here. Now I do have all the information in here, but it's only the information that I need from that load. But if I wanted to go back, if I'm having pressure issues, I can always go back to this and say, okay, well this is the speed I'm getting. Now I'm showing pressure issues. I can always go back and reference this data. On the data, like here's some 338 Lapua that I made some subsonic rounds. I put like an asterisk on here just so I know exactly where to go to. This is ultimately my load. And then on that next page, I'll write down like, here's my load. And then I go into my other book and specifically list that information. So write that information down. Now what I'm going to do again before I write this information and call it 100% good. If it's worth checking twice, it's worth checking 3 times. So I'm going to take this back out. run this in here. And then I'm going to get another bullet and test this one more time. Let's see, 2.326. Now, I already know that that's exactly what my data was, but let me just double check it. 2.236, and we are good. I'm gonna call that 100%. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. That's just my method of doing this. Again, once this is set, it should be good to go. So you shouldn't have to do this again for this gun. So also in my data book, I'm writing down exactly what gun it is, what dies that I'm using, all of that good stuff. So I think that is it. Now from this point on, it's time to just continue with your normal reloading process. So appreciate you guys.